Welcome to Sermon Brainwave with me, Karoline Lewis.
And me, Matt Skinner.
And me, Rolf Jacobson.
This is the podcast for the first Sunday of Christmas in Year A, which falls on December 28, 2025. And it's also our last podcast of 2025. And so we are inviting you all out there as supporters of Working Preacher or want to be supporters of Working Preacher. You can always, at any time, go to the workingpreacher.org website. There's a little donate button on the top right. And we would love to have you be a donator or a sustainer to this ministry. Thanks again for your support. So the texts for the first Sunday of Christmas are Isaiah chapter 63, verses 7 through 9. The psalm is Psalm 148. We have another reading from Hebrews chapter 2, 10 through 18. And then the gospel is Matthew 2, 13 through 23. A difficult text, I think.
Well, I love me a good
Very
villain.
You said that last week or 2 weeks ago.
Just the Old Testament scholar in me that doesn't mind an emperor who's bent on a lot of bloodshed, you know? But I kind of feel like Herod the Great at the last minute realized he wasn't going to make the Bible unless he did something really awful. That he was only going to be known as the Herod who built the temple, and he was going to get no press. And so he said, let's kill us some babies.
Maybe you should have said, unless I do something else really awful or one more really awful thing.
Yeah. But maybe he wouldn't have even made the Bible.
I was thinking about this story the other day because I was on actually it was a little while ago, I was on a flight and I was rewatching Gladiator 2. Talk about some bad emperors. Same with Gladiator 1, but that was only the second emperor. But Marcus Aurelius was a nice person. Anyway, seemed to be a nice person, even though he wanted all of Rome to be, or all of the world to be his. But nonetheless.
So let me ask you guys some questions about this.
Yes.
I seem to remember in the recesses of my imagination, part of the problem with Herod is he's not Davidic. Am I remembering correct?
He's Idumean.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not even Judean. He's...
What does Idumean mean? I don't even know what that means.
Sorry. He's from Idumea. So south of Judea.
Okay, I had that much figured out. He's from Idumea.
Judea. So he's, to some of his contemporary Jews, he's not Jewish enough.
He's not Davidic.
No. I think he might be Hasmonean. I mean, so which is another thing. But he's part of a family that was politically very savvy and ingratiated themselves to Augustus, the first Roman emperor, early on when he was still Octavian, and they were rewarded well for that. And so Herod knew how to play the political game very, very well, did a lot of things to bring Judea into, for that time, the modern world and connections, and, bringing it into the Roman Empire's orbit into some really helpful ways, financially, economically, but was also, I don't use this word clinically, paranoid, violent, awful.
Yeah.
So he's a very complicated character we know from other historical documents. So people will often say, we don't know if this really happened, what Matthew describes, but it sure sounds like Herod. Like it could have, given what we know about this man.
I'm very leery of people making facile sort of comparisons with any modern condition or reality. But when I say I love a good villain, I do think a reminder that Jesus came actually to save us from something that's tragically wrong with us at the heart of our condition. And that certain tyrants like Herod raise the issue of what that is. And there might be multiple answers. In fact, there are. Just look around at history about how people think what is the solution to our human condition economically, nationally, and so on. And finally, I think, for me, Jesus offers a solution that actually, it's no solution in the sense that it's not a system of government, it's not a system of economy, but rather it's salvation from the condition itself.
And yet it's in that promise that there is such resistance, right?
Yeah, in a way, this is the most honest Christmas story. In Luke, we don't learn much of anything about how the broader world responds to Jesus beyond the folks in the temple, like Simeon and Anna. And here we get the Magi, who are their own wild story, and we'll come back to them at the start of Epiphany. But we get Herod, who I think recognizes the implications of Christmas very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it's what sets him off.
Mm-hmm.
So my sermon title this week would be Tyrants Hate Christmas.
Well, okay.
We would talk a bit about
But he does and
that.
he doesn't.
Well, of course, right. But
What-
he recognizes that he's not the king of the Jews,
Right.
and that this was a threat. And the Magi, for some reason, have betrayed him as well. So already he looks like a fool. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
I
go
wonder
ahead. You're about the is and isn't.
I wonder about that part too, right? It's not only the threat to, potential threat to him, but he's also been sort of embarrassed. So it's all,
Right.
so it becomes this sort of completely irrational, I'm going to do this, when he's sort of called to task on both of those accounts.
Yeah, he's been outflanked by the Magi and by God.
Yeah, I'm going to do this.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly by God, right?
I actually think that's a really funny line. Having been warned in a dream, that idea, which is like, how many clues did you actually need to know that you shouldn't go back and tell Herod where this kid is?
Oh, with the
I
Magi.
mean, do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, if they're really all that wise, did they actually need the hint? Tell me where that baby is, the new king. I want to worship
The
him.
Bible doesn't say they were wise; it just says they were Magi.
Well,
yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah,
This is
good point.
It's such a hard story, and it's a shock to a lot of people. Like, why are you preaching on this the Sunday after Christmas?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so there is a sense of realism about it. Like I said, this is the most honest or most real, because you get a sense of how the birth of the Messiah is more than a cute baby who bears God's image in a very unique way, but is also about how the kingdom of God is going to be perceived as, and is indeed, a threat to certain kinds of human construals of power and
That's
greatness.
Well, let me come back to that, because I didn't actually answer the question.
Sure. Yeah. Why is it and is it not?
I think it's not, because Jesus does not come as a political threat to Herod directly. I mean, he's not trying to establish a new Davidic dynasty territorially in the land. And in order to do that, he's going to need to dethrone Herod. I don't think that's the kind of King Jesus at all. So I think actually Herod's wrong. And so his slaughter of these babies is not only is it an evil response, but it's just wrong. He didn't need to do it. And so therefore, talk about being a fool. He is a fool. When kings and queens throughout history do things they didn't need to do, that actually harms them. And this is one of those things. However, now I want you to go on to say why it is a threat. Because as you said, there is something fundamentally threatening about a God of grace and mercy becoming a human being and dwelling amongst us.
Yeah, for whatever reason. I mean, we know already that Herod's got treachery in mind from the way the story's set up earlier on. Right when he finds out that the Messiah has been born, Herod, in the start of chapter 2, Herod's not pleased. And so,
out.
Yes, what you say, Rolf, would make sense if Herod were a rational person.
Mm.
And if Herod were the kind of ruler who really cares about the good of all humanity and all the people under his charge. But of course he doesn't.
They don't.
He's a narcissist. Again, I don't want to equate modern society, but you know what I mean. He's intoxicated with his own power and his own self-importance. And so in that sense, Christmas is a danger. So they're going to arrest John. They're going to kill John as well, because John calls to account the immorality or the selfishness of rulers. And so there's something, not that Jesus has come, Jesus never marches into anybody's office with power and denounces them, but the gospel itself exposes their, what's the word I want? Is fecklessness the right word? Just their
deplorableness.
Yeah, the
despicableness.
And Herod's, like you said, a good villain because he is so monstrous and an easy target. And everybody in the ancient world would have said, "Oh yeah, this tracks."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But there are other ways, of course, in which power does that, even in non-political settings, right? All sorts of places. So in that regard, the gospel is it shines light into shadowy places by its nature.
Just to be clear, when I was saying when monarchs do stupid things that hurt themselves, I think sometimes they think, no, this is going to be good for me. And they're just so stupid. Like, for instance, I've been listening to the history of the 16th century, really, in Europe. So when they decide at the end of the 15th century in Portugal and Spain, what's now is Portugal and Spain, that they're going to kick all the Jews out, right? They're like, oh, well, then where are we going to get our money? And so that's one of the reasons why they, send Columbus. They fund Columbus. How stupid! Not only was it evil to expel the Jews, it was monumentally stupid because of how much it hurt them. These are good citizens, taxpayers. They support the king and queen. But nope, we're going to do it anyway, just because we're bent on stupidity.
You're listening to a podcast on 16th century Europe these days?
Yep.
That's some big dad energy you got going on.
Yeah, I'm
Dude,
telling you.
You know what?
That's somebody on sabbatical right
I
there.
cut the cord and I'd watch a lot less TV and listen to a lot more podcasts
That's
like
great.
ours.
Oh.
I don't listen to our podcast, but
There you go.
I hope other people do.
I
hope
really
you're a
do
supporter.
hope as well. Maybe one more thing.
I have one more too. If I go.
Oh, you do?
But I had interrupted Karoline.
Well, I think another sort of narrative detail here in this story, and going back to the Magi, that also supports or underscores this idea of the threat of Jesus, or what kind of kingdom will Jesus have. But the way in which the presence of God is so in many ways understated here, in that God directs these events in dreams, right? And so you have being warned in a dream, as you mentioned. You mentioned Rolf, and then you have an angel of the Lord, but then again, after having been warned in a dream, this is verse 22. And so I find that to be so interesting, that it's not God, Herod, right? The God of Israel, and then Herod, but it's just being warned in a dream. And it's in these responses to that dream that that God's plan unfolds. And so it's sort of this subversive kind of activity of God, that even that subversive sort of warned in a dream activity of God can topple an empire, can topple a kingdom, can topple a king. And I think there's something there homiletically as well, that it doesn't take much of God to topple and to counteract the cruelty of the world.
Which is good. It's framing this as a God versus kind of moment, as opposed to the Holy Family verses or something like that. The one thing we haven't really talked about is just the horror of the whole scene. Matthew doesn't give us a numbering of the victims. Bethlehem was a small town. This is probably not a huge amount of people, but any is too many. And so the church has struggled with this throughout the centuries, that you've got a story about a Jesus who gives his life so that the guilty may be forgiven at the end. And here you've got a story where Jesus' life is preserved and innocents are killed. So it's this, you understand, of course, the need to preserve the life of Jesus, but how come God would not rescue the others? What about these children caught in the crossfire, so to speak? And I don't have an answer for that. I think the answer is lament and sorrow, and ways of saying we see this a lot when tyrants and others wage their own battles without regard for those who need protection, those who are most vulnerable. But also the churches, it's just interesting to know, right? There was a time, I forgot when exactly this was, but a doctrine was created that basically all of these babies went straight to heaven, kind of bypassed purgatory. This was a Catholic ruling.
Yeah.
And there's also, this is worth knowing, the Coventry Carol.
Oh.
Which is a very popular Christmas carol. A lot
You're
of
not
songs
sing,
are set to it. No, I don't sing when people can hear me. I only sing when I'm alone.
Or drowned out by like 1,000 other people.
Exactly. Look up the Coventry Carol's lyrics. The Coventry Carol, I think originally, or at least at one point, the lyrics are a lullaby. It's a lullaby that are the mothers of Bethlehem singing a lullaby for their slaughtered children. And it's heartbreaking. And you'll know the tune, but when you read these original words, and so it's not that fixes it or explains it, but it brings into a season that's primarily about joy, the sober reality of grief, loss, and especially it's the worst kind of loss, right? Like what's more awful than children ages 2 and under. So it's, again, to help people get a sense, like we're not the first ones to realize the difficulty of this. And faith has always tried to stand there and say, we can't give all the answers for this. Why could those children's parents not have received a dream to send them to Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I just want to note that. It's because I think most preachers will have people in their congregations who would like an answer, or at least that to be addressed in some way. Anyway, you have the lyrics.
Well, yeah, but I was just singing the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, worth
Yeah.
looking into. So that's a lot of time on Matthew. Sorry for taking so much of it. That's because I have nothing to say about Isaiah 63 today.
Do you, Rolf?
No. I mean, it's so
It's
pulled
an
out
odd
of,
lection.
No, it's so pulled
It's an
out of
odd choice.
context.
Yeah.
It's so out of context. I don't even think
Well,
it's
I also
It doesn't
think...
help you with Matthew
not
2 at
helpful.
all.
No,
Anyway.
and I also think that if you're going to read the Matthew passage, you just have to preach on it. I mean,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
so you can read the other text, but to then focus on another text in the sermon, that doesn't make any sense to me. Because I do think this text is one of those texts, and I've said this about other passages. If you read it out loud in the congregation, in worship, you have to preach on it.
Matthew 2 is.
Yeah, Matthew 2 is.
So if you want to skip it and just sing, you can go to Psalm 148.
There you go.
Yeah.
And leave if it's not right for this Sunday in your context.
Yeah. And so I would say the same with, Hebrews. I mean, it's maybe just reflect on it in your own personal devotional time or something like that. But
Oh, as a preacher. Well,
yeah,
absolutely.
as a preacher.
Well, and Psalm 148 can certainly carry
Sure.
the weight of the day like today.
Sure.
3 days after Christmas, 4 days after Christmas, 3.
Mhm.
I mean, I would preach on it. I mean, it unless there was some really traumatizing reason in a community not to.
Mhm. Mhm.
Is
For
it there Matthew 2?
Matthew 2, I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is back in, was it August or September, we did have a shooting at a Catholic grade school close to us here, where we live in Minneapolis, St.
Annunciation.
Paul. I might not want to do it if I were directly in that neighborhood, which a couple friends of mine are pastors in that neighborhood and were there that day. But I think for the rest, I think it is a reminder that religion is not the opiate of the masses. It's a very serious, especially a Christian faith, is a very serious witness to the response of God to the horrors of the human condition. It's not safe for anybody. But what's at stake is worth God becoming a human being to in turn then die, because the same engines of empire that move to kill these innocent children it's the same engine that moves to kill Jesus in the end. And of course, then the Father, through the power of the Spirit, raises him, because through his death and resurrection, he defeats death for us all.
I think Hebrews might be helpful if that's where you're going to go. The weird thing about Hebrews is it starts about bringing many children to glory, and that could get misheard
Pretty
in
much.
tandem with Matthew 2. But it does go on in verse 17 to describe Jesus, who is like his siblings in every respect, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest. So to talk about a God who knows this same kind of, what's the word you talked, the terrors of the human condition, I think you said.
the
knows.
horrors, yeah.
Solidarity in that.
Right. And so then you're like, okay, so Merry Christmas, everybody. We also have our eyes on Easter and on Holy Week, and just to help people get a sense for the fragility of the incarnation also means this. There's going to be a day where no dream is going to protect Jesus.
Sermon Brainwave is a production of Working Preacher from Luther Seminary. Working Preacher has been a trusted source of inspiration, interpretation, and imagination for preachers since 2007 and worldwide. Find episodes, commentaries, and links at workingpreacher.org/brainwave, and subscribe to Working Preacher's monthly newsletter for Revised Common Lectionary preachers by clicking on subscribe in the website footer. Please rate, review, and comment on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for joining us.